Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel, and I am very pleased to welcome back Sue Brayne. Hello, Sue.
Hello.
You are gearing up to do something rather exciting for the Shift Network on the 30th of this month. So it's very, very imminent, and it's called the Astrology of Life and Death. So I know that this is your speciality, and I know that we've already had a conversation around this not long ago. But I thought it would be good to see where you're at with this. So tell us, what is it that has been kind of on your mind as you've been preparing for this course?
Oh, gosh, that's a lovely, juicy question. I think it's the sadness of, and I don't want to diss the church, but for what happened as Christianity spread throughout the ancient world and how their doctrine pushed astrology aside, but absolutely refused to accept any form of understanding about reincarnation, which had been an ancient teaching. I mean, this goes back to Plato, and Plato apparently, I learned as I was doing my research, was actually a student of Pythagoras. He wasn't alive at the same time with Pythagoras, but learnt from him and went to Italy to Pythagoras Centre there. So, and I absolutely love the whole thing that Aristotle, who was Plato's student, disagreed and said, no, 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 there is no reincarnation. But these two completely opposing ideas, nobody had an issue about it. It was just a debate about, well, let's try and make sense about life and death. But Plato was hugely influential on people's understanding about the soul coming from a sense of the divine. He called it the forms, the ultimate goodness, and a sort of descending through the realms of the planetary realms and incarnating into the cross of matter. And that was his thing, and that we were here to learn. The soul was hungry to learn and evolve. And I love that teaching, and it makes sense to me. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. But he then wrote this wonderful, I suppose is it a parable, but a story called The Myth of which is about was a warrior, and he died, and then he was taught about what happened after he died and how the souls were judged, and when they were judged they learnt from that, and then they chose how to come reincarnate back into life to kind of deal with that karma, if you like. This is putting a very sort of swift gloss on what the myth of is about. So it's a very deep, moralistic, I suppose, a teaching story about morality and the power of the soul. And I love those teachings. And unfortunately, the church completely disregarded them. But not just that, but persecuted people that actually continued to believe in reincarnation. It wasn't accepted after Christianity became legalized in the time of uh, I was going to say,
Constantine.
thank you. I was going to say Constantinople.
Right.
Constantine.
Constantine.
Yeah, in 313, that's when he legalized Christianity. And then obviously the first meeting of Nicaea was 325, where the Christian doctrine was stabilized and said, right, this is what we're going to teach. And they completely rejected any form of reincarnation, any
Well,
prince
they
of
rejected
reincarnation.
all the different gospels that were around and kept the ones that they chose, and no doubt redacted a good chunk
Yeah.
of those. But it's more than that too, because we did have some Christian sects who continued, such as the Cathars, to believe in reincarnation,
But look what happened to
and
them.
and then of course they were obliterated.
Yes, they were.
So we have all of that. But coming back again, It's interesting because as I was listening to you, just this very week, an interview has gone out on the sister channel to this called "In the Light Growing Your Soul," in which I speak to a gentleman about near-death experiences, but accounts of them across time. And what he is saying is that much of the mythology of the ancient world, going right back to ancient Egypt, if you strip out the themes, you can see that these are accounts of near-death experiences. And so what he's saying is that much of the understanding of the ancient world that becomes what we say is mythology, but which was their theology and their beliefs,
Yeah.
are actually rooted in near-death experiences. And we know, for instance, that the ancient Egyptians did believe in reincarnation. Now, at some point, it was only the pharaohs, only the special souls that actually reincarnated. But nevertheless, the concept is there, and then it becomes part of belief systems across ancient cultures that everyone reincarnates, that there's a soul, etc. So it's there, and he is linking that to the accounts of people who had near-death experiences. So it kind of the two are linked, and it makes sense that there would be this influence, because if somebody has died and come back and said, well, this is what it was like, you're going to listen. And you know, that's an attention grabbing headline, I think. And if it repeatedly, the same themes are cropping up, then at some point this is going to become part of a wider belief system, which then what he's saying becomes, looking for the right word here, but it becomes dogma. Not dogma, it's not what I want, but it's like it's written down. It's written down, and it's now forming a belief system around which cultures are built. So it is interesting, and we have hot debates about why the church would have excluded deliberately anything to do with reincarnation. But it is inherent there. And then, of course, we have centuries later the whole of the materialist movement coming through the so-called Age of Enlightenment, which really we're still grappling with. So it's the two things. And yes, astrology gets pushed aside very, very pointedly then, and so on. So you are totally immersed in this link then of life, death, and astrology. And just to add one more thing, I was recently rereading Gilgamesh, one of our most ancient epic. And you know what that is about? It's about the grief of the loss of a friend. Over the loss of a friend who is like a brother. And Gilgamesh has to, he can't bear this grief, and he goes on a journey to try to resurrect his beloved friend. So this is stuff that we are feeling now in our hearts, the pain of loss, but it's the experience of humanity. So tell us what you're doing with it all.
Well, very much so. I think it is. I think for me, when I really look at my experience of loss and grief and death, it shapes your life, of course it does. But I think it's this sort of, it's taught me to, every time I come across somebody, of course, at my age, people are dying. People that I know are dying. Obviously, they are. But I just feel like it's such a it's I hate using the word gift because it sounds really crass, but it feels like it really sharpens me up and reminds me that it's going to be my turn soon. And I think if we can't understand or we can't connect with these amazing cycles that are just written in the stars, and that each one of us is is attuned to our own cycle of life and death. We don't know how long it's going to be or how short it's going to be, but it's there. It's constantly playing out, and we need to. For me, I was saying that just the other day. I want to die well. I want to die consciously. And my understanding of astrology and my understanding of my own cycles of life and death are really enabling me to look and to prepare for when that time comes consciously. I want to die aware. And I absolutely love what Carl Jung talked about, saying that the midlife crisis, and I love the fact he just so loved astrology, but the midlife crisis is the time where, after the midlife crisis, in his understanding, this is the divine time, the timing to start preparing for our death, because it's the second half of life. And Richard Rohr beautifully mirrors this, because he's a Franciscan friar, and he runs the Center for Contemplative Prayer in New Mexico. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's done a huge amount to help me resolve my rage with the church. And he talks about the whole concept of falling upwards. That was the book that really turned me on to him, that the first half of life is all ego driven and we don't really know who we are, and we're experimenting with life and falling over and picking ourselves up again. And at the second half of life, there is this innate call to go to something greater than ourselves. And if we listen to that call, that's when we really start to attune to what our highest purpose is, what our highest calling is in this lifetime. And I was talking to the lovely Stephen Forrest about this, who's an evolutionary astrologer, and I was saying to him, Stephen, if we don't listen to that call, that higher self call, this is what I'm here to do, this is who I am, do you think it affects our dying process? And he said, absolutely yes. Because I think it's the difference between somebody who gets to the end of their life thinking, well, do you know what? I did the best I could, and I feel like I lived, I lived kind of the best I possibly could, and I offered whatever I could, against somebody who's filled with a sort of sorrow and regret, or is fighting death because actually they're not ready, because they haven't done the work. And I think this is where the astrology of alchemy comes in, this whole concept of the magnum opus, the great work, and going through all the levels of meeting the pain, the grief of the human condition. And we each of us play that out. It is part of being here. None of us can come onto this planet and escape it. It's just not possible. And I think that we don't understand that, and we don't honor it, and we don't understand the grieving process, or how precious the grieving process is. And I think one of the saddest things in modern life is actually we've stopped the mourning period after somebody's died. We don't know how to mourn. We're back at work in 2 days. Get on with it. Well, look, death isn't like that. It throws you into a completely different relationship with yourself and with life. And without that mourning period, we can't pay proper respect to it. So this is very much what I'm interested in, and how astrology, linking back to the cycles of life and death, can help to readdress things like that. Yeah.
Cycles obviously are very much a part of our lives, and we're recording this a day after the autumn equinox, and I think that we experience those four seasons throughout our lives, in different ways. But I think that if we take it onto a larger time span, and we think about that period in life when we're past that first flush of youth, and we're kind of past the consolidation part as well, and now it's a more reflective part.
It
I
can be. I
it can
don't think it is for everyone because a
coming
lot of
back.
people are fighting it in our modern
Exactly.
world.
Yeah. But it's that I think it's akin to the autumn period, and I think about what we do in autumn. If I think about what I'm doing on my allotments, it's a time of tidying up and preparing actually for the winter, but crucially also for the spring, because these are the seeds.
Absolutely.
Anyone who grows vegetables will know this is the time now to start thinking about planting garlic, planting onions, perhaps even something like broad beans, definitely daffodils and tulips. We want to get those in now because that is for next spring. So we're tidying up, but we're still sowing those seeds. And I think if we are to embrace this part of life most fully, then we are called to also be elders and teachers. And that is, again, a very important role to play, which has been obliterated really as a concept from our society. And instead, and very often, come this time of year, a lot of people mourn summer. There's that feeling of, oh, summer is gone. And there's that a feeling of grief over the loss of summer. And in that same way, very many people fall into the grief of the loss of youth, not realizing how vital they are and how vital a part they have yet to play
In a different
in
way.
a different way, but also, the need to take care of the body and to ensure that that aging process happens in the healthiest and most alive way possible. So this period does not need to be short. It can be, a beautiful long
Yeah, and
period.
I think there's a deeper thing going on here personally. And I'm with you completely on this, but I think if we I'm personally I'm increasingly persuaded by the whole concept of reincarnation. I am. I don't think and I very much follow William Meader's teaching, the esoteric teacher, that Sue Brayne, won't exist. My this personality will die, but this essence of which I carry, which is very unique to me, will carry on, and it will go. It will be passing the baton on to another incarnation. And I had a most wonderful experience when I was doing a workshop with him, and he was encouraging us to think about what do we want to leave behind and what do we want to pass on as this flow of consciousness to the next incarnation. And mine next incarnation, if this is true, but he appeared to me, and it was just the most lovely, wonderful, warm feeling. I was like, oh, you're cool. If I'm going to pass my baton on to you, my agreement for you is to do the best I can, to be as clear as I can when I die, so you don't have to do what I've been doing the work that I've had to do to get to this point. And I do think that feeds into the whole concept of raising consciousness, the fact that as we die consciously, hopefully that the next incarnation will come back at a higher level than us.
Totally. And that I think is why I was talking about the planting of what's coming for next spring.
Absolutely.
because as we become more reflective, and as we consider what we've learned and what we'd like to evolve or develop in this next phase of life, then we're also considering what needs to be tidied up. And this is what I was talking about. What is it that needs to go onto the bonfire? What is it that needs to be cleared so that the spring is great? It's a great spring. And that, as I was saying, is about taking care of our bodies to give us the best chance possible to continue in the work. This is not winter, it's autumn we're talking about.
And I think it's about going beyond your own self, the small self. And I think getting towards the end of life, it is about opening up to something. For me, definitely something bigger is guiding me these days, and how I've ended up running this 7-week course with the Shift Network. I swear to God, it's got nothing to do with me. This has felt like a finger when it's you. It's been the most bizarre experience, but I trust it. I completely trust the process that's unfolding at the moment, and that the people that come will be exactly who they're meant to be for their soul's evolution. And if they take nothing away apart from, do you know what? There's more to life than I thought. That's all that matters. Because life, I think once you kind of open up to maybe or you kind of look up out of the box, if you like, then life, there's a flow that happens. And suddenly, I think, I totally trust my relationship with the universe completely. And that's taken me 72 years to do that. It's a lot, I think the other thing about life, it's an unfoldment. And every time you think you're there, you're not. It's just another chapter, another unfoldment. It's like this beautiful Turkish carpet that's constantly rolling out just a little bit of color, and then it rolls out more, and you get a bit more color, and it rolls out more. And that's how I feel my life is. It's constantly unrolling and unraveling and showing me more. And I look back and go, blimey, what an incredible experience that's been. And there's more to come. And I
Yeah.
find that's how I look at life now. This sort of sense that I don't feel I'm not in charge. It's not that I am powerless, absolutely not, because I've definitely got free will going on here, and I can choose to engage or not. But it is this sense of being in a flow with something far greater than me, and it's guiding me towards my death. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
I think ultimately also what you're really saying is that we need to stop thinking about death as in something dying and it's the end, it's a full stop. And what
It's a
we
full
need
stop. We have to have death to understand life. It's really important part of it. But the full stop, that can go.
exactly that this is more of a continuous process, and it's the end of one cycle, which means the beginning of another. And what we
Exactly.
see as death is the end of one cycle. I think the ancients found that easy because many ancient cultures saw everything as cycles, and the great ages and then the mini ages, and so the way that they saw time. So I think this is for us a bit harder because we see it.
Well, the thing is, it really changed everything, the Age of Enlightenment. I mean, such is the desire for human consciousness to know that we can't let things rest, we have to. And we went through the Age of Enlightenment, and we're still experiencing, if you can't see it, you can't prove it, so it doesn't exist. And anything abstract or mystical like astrology, tarot, the alchemy was just been pushed aside and ridiculed or scorned or told it was evil. And what it does, it robs us of what I call Kairos time, that beautiful understanding that we all inside us have this incredible intuition that connects with the divine timing, this the cosmic cycle of our own life and death. And that when we're robbed of that, life becomes really dull. It's kind of one dimensional, and we can't be what end up becoming full of grief, and we become full of shame and guilt, and we can't move out of that, and we stop looking up. And I think when we stop looking up, we lose awe and wonder. And I think that's what we're still experiencing all this time ago from the church's repression and also from the age of enlightenment. And thank God for new science that's going, hang on a second, there's something really cool going on in the universe, and obviously the James Webb telescope is really showing us that it is more than likely that the universe is indeed utterly conscious and sentient, which then makes astrology conscious and sentient. It gives us back the language of astrology, and therefore astrology we reclaim the beauty and the magic and the mystery of it.
So I would say that the second Saturn return is somewhat significant as a portal into this phase that we are talking about. It's not the only, but I would probably say that it's that feeling, and perhaps even the Chiron return.
Oh, definitely.
The Chiron return
Absolutely.
is very significant because it really is that moment when you begin to feel like, I've been here a while now, and my parents are aging, and it's that moment of awakening to the fact that time is passing, I feel,
Oh,
with Chiron
definitely.
return.
I tell you, Chiron return for a woman, she looks in the mirror and she stops being young. And that is just such, I remember it myself going, oh my God. And the mourning that I felt from my youth as a woman that could walk into a room and command attention, it had gone. The magic, whatever that magic was, wasn't there anymore. And there's such a lot of readjustment, and we don't have a society that supports this. That's the tragedy. We have a society that idolizes youth. And actually, I looked up the spend on staying youthful products, and we're talking by 2030, it's hundreds of billions of pounds. And that's what we're being fed. Not this, wow, you're now entering into, Saturn is inviting you to become a wise older person. Are you going to take that on? Or are you just going to just carry on pretending that you're not growing old?
Yes, and I think there is. I think there's a real Peter Pan complex that operates within our culture. It's the forever young culture, and I think for women, it's always be a princess, never a queen, because it's the ideal is the princess, but to never be a queen means you never step into your own power, and I think for men it's the same thing. There's more acceptance of the notion of a man becoming king, and in fact it's quite desirable. But I feel that more and more in our society men are encouraged to be the prince but not the king,
But
because
they don't know their place anymore. I think it's
it's
so hard for men now.
it is, and it's forever prince, because forever prince means no responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very damaging devolution, I would call it, within our society. So we're looking at the Chiron return as that sting that says, time is passing, and then Saturn return is another big moment, and I think that that's really inviting you to step into being the elder.
Well, in my experience of my second Saturn return, it felt like Saturn went like this to me. Oh, you're on completely the wrong path. I'll pick you up and put you here. Literally. And I went, I beg your pardon. What? No, that's not in my game plan. And it was in Saturn's game plan. It was very, very challenging. But what it did was open me up to this. And if I carried on this other path, I would never have done this work. So Saturn knows, it knows what you need. It knows how to invite you to become, to open up as an older person to who you truly are. And you can fight Saturn if you want to, absolutely. But a lot of my clients are now 60, 61, 62. I get a lot of at 50 and a lot at when they're just gone through their Saturn return going, what am I here for? I'm 63 and I don't know. And so, that's the glory of astrology is just gently unfolding their chart in front of them and examining their north node, and it's time to go there, and you can just see the lights going on. Oh my goodness me.
It's
So
the reckoning, isn't it? Always with Saturn returns. You
yes,
get your first Saturn return, and it is a time of reckoning because you suddenly go,
it is.
oh goodness, it's like somebody's tapped you on the shoulder and said, excuse me, have you actually realized that you are an adult?
Yeah,
Stop mucking about.
yeah,
And either you are already kind of weighed down with responsibility and thinking, is this what adulthood means? Or
yeah,
you've been having a lovely kind of, you know, gap decade, and suddenly Saturn's tapping on your shoulder going, it's not all meant to be a bowl of cherries. So time to
yeah,
work. So it's
yeah,
one of those, so it really is the time of reckoning. And then when it comes around the second time, 28 years later, it really is a time for going, okay, so what have we done here? It's again, what have we done here? And we're conscious of the fact that there's less time ahead of us than there is behind us. And so
yeah. Hunger
do
to
we
get on with
need,
it.
do we need to
Yeah,
change
give something
direction?
of meaning.
Do we need, and so for me always, when I think about that second Saturn return, it's about a deepening, the deepening of the understanding. And actually perhaps as the clock is ticking, the reminder that it's the opportunities for the full embodiment of the soul are reducing because we're running out of time. We haven't got forever anymore.
Well, it invites you to step up if you're listening. That's the thing. Otherwise, a lot of people around, a lot of women actually just going, do you know what? Kids have left home. I'm off. I don't want to be married anymore. And that's happening more with women than it is with men. But at 60, but I feel that there's a kind of a call of that goes out when you're. It was certainly did for me. I was kind of thinking, oh, yeah, this is really nice, and I'm not quite sure. And then Saturn, boom, straight away, literally lifted me up and went like that. And so it does that, and that can be extremely painful because when it calls you to reckon with yourself, it means loss and death of something, and it normally is the death of your ego or your illusions and delusions. So it's just interesting, the whole aging process, and how astrology is very much leading, or the archetypal energy of astrology leads us forward in that.
And we haven't even talked about the Uranus return, which of course is, you know,
Yeah.
this is potentially proper old age now. We've kind of left autumn, and now it's the winter years. And how do we deal with that? And because it's
Well, I've interviewed two people recently who are 84. One's 86, one's 84. And I said, what's it been like? Because both of them were astrologers. What's it been like to have a Uranus return? And she went, well, I'm still here. I was just like, and she, do you know what? I'm ready to go. My time is done. I'm ready to go, but she's still here.
My mother tells me that every day, and she's had her Uranus return, and
Yeah.
she says, "Well, I'm still here. Not sure why, but I'm still here."
And that can often be, I don't know why, because I think there is an element of being done. I do with that Uranus returns.
With
It's really
with
interesting talking to older
some,
people.
obviously not for all, but for some, I think that is the case. And you know, I'm watching what's happened with my mum, and there is a marked cognitive deterioration,
Yeah, well,
and
quite right too.
she is now, going through a Uranus Sun conjunction,
Oh,
and
okay.
she has changed.
Mm,
And the Uranus thing, it's this liberation always with Uranus. And I notice with her that as much as she says, I'm still here and I'm not sure why, there's also a feeling of I don't really care anymore. So I'm still here, I'm still here. But yeah, there's
yeah.
I feel that there's a kind of liberation that I can't really describe or put my finger on, but her
Oh,
energy.
no question. I talked a lot to Felicity Warner about this sort of lessening, there's organic process that comes up, after a certain time. I'm not there yet, but I'll get there. When the attachment to physicality, to physical life, it starts to go very strongly. And this sense of, I don't know why I'm here. And of course, a lot of people have been kept here because of medication. So, I know somebody who's was kept here. She's actually died now, but she was in her 90s with a pacemaker, and she was going, "Why can't I die? I want to die." And of course, he couldn't possibly take the pacemaker out. That wouldn't be ethical. So, there is all of these very powerful ethical issues that we're not addressing about our dying process. But this organic feeling, I'm ready to go, is terribly important to honor and to listen to, rather than just saying, oh my God, I'll just give you the more drugs.
Okay, so what we are not saying here is that come the Uranus return, we should be pulling the plug and saying, okay, you've had a good innings and off you go now. That is not what we are saying.
No, not at all. But
What we are
it is
saying,
an organic process that goes in. And all the people I've spoken to around this age are saying the same thing. So there is
now,
something going on here.
to throw the cat amongst the pigeons, uh, I'm going to say, in a society that makes people feel that they're on the scrap heap from the moment they retire, one would think that 20 years of being on the scrap heap and not valued might well be contributing to this feeling of, well, I don't know what I'm doing here.
I just
So,
think it's natural life running out.
I guess what I'm saying is these are very deep and complex questions. And what we need to absolutely be doing as a society is rethinking our attitude to aging so that nobody feels that they're on the scrap heap. And then it could be that those latter years might be more meaningful for those who have still got their cognitive function and who are healthy, because they are about, and I see them. I know quite. I'm blessed to know a few people who are around the Uranus return, who do feel very free, and who are enjoying the fact that they still have reasonably good functioning bodies and minds. And the more I think that we make people feel valued, the better.
Yeah, and that's a very, that's a political and social issue. Absolutely. And I think personally, I think the more that you understand your astrological chart, I have to bring it back to that. The more you understand what you're doing here and why you're here. Who am I? Where am I here? Where do I come from? If you can answer those three questions, you're doing very well in your spiritual evolution and your soul's evolution. And I think that's something that we can, as astrologers, we can really help people to address, and therefore that they can understand what they are here for. So, and I think there's nothing that works better for me than astrology. I mean, some people use therapy or lots of different modes to help you to respond to those questions. But for me, astrology has been the most significant.
Well, astrology certainly offers us both a mirror and a
Yeah, I
and
think
for
so.
which I
Archetype
am
of mirror.
grateful which
Yeah,
modality I am using, whether it's purely astrology or whether it's therapy or regression. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. If the astrology, the chart is there in front of me, I
absolutely.
I am well equipped to
Yeah,
help my clients with whatever it is they need. And so, a reminder to everyone that the course that Sue is running is called The Astrology of Life and Death. It is with the Shift Network, and it is happening live on the 30th of this month, September, at
at
5 p.m. London time.
London
However,
time.
the good news is that the recording will be available for
Yeah,
those who cannot join.
yeah.
So, Sue, thank you so much. I'll be putting a link to
Pleasure.
the description box.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll send you the link so that they can anybody who's interested can go straight to the link.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much. And thank you all for watching. Also, in the description box, you will find links to my own websites, as well as my Substack. And for any information on courses that I might be running, also, that is a good place to go. Next time, we're going to be looking at relationships, shadow, and projection. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.